Hi, my name is Tanner Stratford, and this will be my presentation on the design pattern called a Model View Controller, also known as the MVC design pattern. So what is the MVC design pattern? Well, the MVC design pattern in a nutshell, it is a design pattern that separates the way the user interacts with the application into three parts: the model, view, and controller. As the user interacts with the view, the model stores data, well, the database stores data, which is determined, its structure is determined by the model, and the controller sort of acts as a bridge between the two. So there's a quote by Ralph F. Grove. He said in his article titled The MVC Web Design Pattern that the model view controller design pattern is cited as the basis for the architecture of several web application frameworks such as ASP.NET, Rails, and Struts. The MVC pattern was originally implemented in the Smalltalk 80 programming environment developed at Xerox PARC. Alright, so what would be a practical application, or what would be a good way that we can use this pattern in our app? Well, I want to start this off by saying I'm actually taking a web engineering class right now, and I'm currently using the Model View Controller design pattern to build a website of a shop. So with this pattern, I have a specific folder for the models, the controllers, and the views. In the model folder, I have code that essentially determines the structure of the data that is being saved to the database. In the views folder, I have all the EJS or HTML files. Those files determine what the user sees on the screen. And in the controller folder, I have code that takes the input that users enter into input fields in order to save that to the database. And it also is able to retrieve that data later on to be able to display it to the view. So using the same structure but applying it to the calendar in our app, let's say we have a new user that creates an account and signs in, and immediately the controller sends a response of a page of an empty calendar. What this page looks like would be determined by the view. Now let's say that the user would like to schedule time to study, so they pick a day and a time and push the button to save that time. The controller is able to take this data that the user entered into the view and save that data into the database. The structure of this database would be determined from the model. So now let's say that the user comes back another day and signs in again. The controller will send a view of the calendar, but this time it will also send the data that was entered by the user in the first session, and this will show up in the view as well. So what are some of the upsides of the MVC pattern? So as it says in a couple of the quotes I have here, the model view control design pattern is very useful for architecting interactive software systems, and the primary benefit of the MVC design pattern is separation of concerns and the resulting modularity. And I would especially like to think that the separation of concerns is definitely probably one of the biggest upsides to the MVC pattern. In the project that I'm doing right now, I guess in all the projects that I've ever done, I've had a hard time organizing which code goes where. But with the MVC pattern, it's been very easy to know, okay, this code goes here because that's what the user is going to see and interact with. The controllers, what takes those interactions, that's what's going to save that to the database, and then this goes there, this goes there. It's just very easy for me to conceptualize which code goes where and which work I have to do in each part. And I would say that this would be especially useful if we're going to use task analysis, like if we want to break our tasks down into separate components so that some people can work on some things and some people other things. The MVC pattern would definitely be a very beneficial way to do this, because we can have some people working on the model, some people working on the views, some people working on the controller. So this separation of concerns, I would say, is probably one of the biggest advantages that the MVC pattern has. Alright, now that I've went over the upsides, what are some of the downsides of the MVC pattern? Well, according to the quotes that I found here, applying the model view controller design pattern to web applications is complicated by the fact that current technologies encourage developers to partition the application as early as in the design phase. The subsequent changes to that partitioning require considerable changes to the application's implementation, despite the fact that the application logic has not changed. So in my experience, I haven't really noticed the downsides yet, but in a project as big as this, I could definitely see this being an issue in the future. So it is definitely something to consider if we're going to go forward with the MVC pattern. Alright, so as far as the recommendations go, like it says in the bullet point, the recommendation that I would make would be that if we're more worried about keeping everything organized in the sense that we want to separate the tasks into manageable and reasonable amounts, using the MVC design pattern would be a wise choice. And I can definitely, I guess, like testify that. I know that using the MVC pattern has helped me a lot, at least in keeping things organized. So if organization is what we think will keep us on track and what we think that will help us to be able to finish the project sooner, I would say that this would be probably the best way to go. Alright, here are my references here, and that concludes the presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and hope you all have a great day.